When I was a child, I had many ambitions. I wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. I even wanted to be an air stewardess. But as I grew older, as it happens to most people in their teenage years, these ambitions slowly faded. And when the time actually came for me to decide on my career pathway, my parents suggested medicine. I did see it coming, seeing that my father is a doctor himself. But to be honest, I was not really up for it, because I saw the long hours my dad worked and how he used to disappear from church service and family gatherings to go to the hospital, that I thought to myself, this is not the kind of life I would want to sign up for. So I struggled with the idea of pursuing medicine for quite a while, until one day when I had a heart-to-heart talk with my mom. She took my hands, looked me in the eye and said, you know, I think it's good to be a doctor. It's good to help others. But at that time, I didn't know what she meant. I mean, isn't that what doctors do? Save lives? I could not visualize what the impact of a doctor was, what it meant for society and for myself. But at the age of 17, I knew I was too young, too naive, and I think I was too lazy to make any big decisions on my own. So long story short, I listened to my parents, and off I went to medical school in Russia. Years went by, things were good, until one early morning in November 2008, when I received a text from my dad. The text read, please arrange to come home as soon as possible. Mommy is not doing well. Now, I knew my mom had cancer. She had undergone radiotherapy, 2 surgeries, and was in the midst of her chemotherapy. I had just spent my summer holidays at home a couple of months back, and she did seem all right at that time. I could not fathom what I had just read. Being a medical student, I understood illnesses, disease progression, but yet, when it came to my mom, I suddenly could not comprehend how things could change so drastically in such a short period of time. My mind was a mess. I had exams coming up, classes to go to, lectures to attend. Nevertheless, I bought my tickets and I was on the next flight home. Upon arriving at the hospital, my emotions were all over the place. My mom looked so thin, so frail, and so pale that it broke my heart to see her that way. I am the eldest amongst 4 siblings, the youngest who was only 10 at that time. So I tried to remain composed, but I think I was the most emotional amongst all of them. Days went by, and we knew her time was near. One day, when we were alone in the hospital room, she took my hands and looked at me with her weary eyes and said, please study hard and be a good doctor so that you can help others. I wish I could live long enough to see you graduate, get married, and have kids. I can still hear those words very clearly in my head until today. She passed away on the 14th of December, 2008. I graduated 2 years later in 2010, returned to Kuching, and started my career as a doctor. But the second death I witnessed during my first few days as an intern was a painful reminder of her demise, and I was close to tears. It was tough because she was the one who encouraged me to do medicine from the very beginning. And now that she was gone, I felt like I had lost my sense of direction. But I told myself to suck it up because this was going to be part of my daily life as a doctor. And the only way I knew how to adapt was to build a wall around me, barricading myself from all emotions and only choosing which ones to let in. The adapting went well, and I thought I was getting better at my job. But I kept having this sense of emptiness in me. Being a doctor was supposed to be rewarding, yet it became just a mundane job which paid my bills. Yes, of course, I helped others, but the trade-offs were my own emotions. I had lost most of my ability to empathize with others. However, all of this changed when I was introduced to a group of volunteers from REACH, which stands for Rural Expeditions Assisting Community Health. I found out that they go on voluntary medical mission trips to the interior villages in Sarawak like Baram, providing primary and preventive medical and dental care. Not long after that, Sister Christina asked me if I would like to join them on one of their trips. At that time, I had heard about Baram before, but to me, it was just another village in the interior of Sarawak. I was a little hesitant at first. I mean, growing up in Kuching, a comfortable city, going to a place like Baram seemed like a bizarre idea to do. And why would I go so far just to treat patients when I'm already doing that every day? And if I were to go anywhere, I think it would be to get away from work. But I gave that thought a thorough consideration. And somewhere, somehow, deep down inside of me, I knew that I needed this experience. I needed this experience to learn how to feel again. I needed this experience to teach me how to be human again. And so I embarked on my first ever journey to Baram in June 2015. After about 8 hours on logging roads, we arrived at a quaint little village called Long Pakan. The sun was bright, but the wind in our faces took away the heat. I saw children standing in the row on the patio of their wooden houses, smiling shyly at us. The adults came to greet us and offered to carry our belongings into the house. I switched off my cell phone, as there was no cell phone coverage over there. It was like a whole new world, totally different from the city I grew up in. We were welcomed like guests, and in return, we provided free medical and dental services to the villagers. The villagers had little access to medical and dental care due to financial and also logistic limitations. We ran our clinics at any open space given to us. We diagnosed and treated many different medical conditions, performed tooth extractions, and also taught them the basics of good personal hygiene. We listened to their stories and problems and offered assistance in any way that we can. The villagers admitted that they didn't have much to offer, yet they welcomed us with open arms and such warm hospitality that it spoke volumes of the way I looked at my own life before this. We slept in their houses with holes in floorboards, cobwebs in every corner, sometimes having to pitch our tents to shield ourselves from insects and mice. One day, a villager told me, "I have run out of medication. The flying doctor could not come due to bad weather." And it was then I realized how many times I and so many others have taken the privileges we have in the city for granted. It was then I realized how much these villagers needed our help. And it was also then I decided that I would return. Since then, I have been on multiple trips to Baram, and I cannot help but notice the vast differences in urbanization in our country, in our very own state. We have high-rise buildings in big cities, good transportation, clean water supply, and round-the-clock electricity supply. But somewhere, many miles away in our very own state, there are people who are being deprived of their very basic needs. Their water source would be from the rivers nearby or gravity-fed. Electricity was not guaranteed, and a generator would be run if needed. Food would be catch of the day: wild boar, deer, monitor lizards, or fish. The kids would usually run around barefooted with dirt and grub on their clothes and faces. In another village, a girl came up to me and said, "Can you please come to my house and see my father?" It was an elderly man who had been having diarrhea and vomiting for the past few days. He lied on the floor of a stuffy room with only a thin mat beneath him. And as we attended to him, flies buzzed around. After administering some fluids and medication, we told him to rest and that we would come and see him again the next morning. The next day when we woke, he was already up and about with a huge grin on his face. His daughter ran up to me, grabbed my hand, and looked at me and smiled so widely at me as a sign of gratitude. I then tried to count the number of times I myself had smiled so widely for something so simple. And to my disbelief, it was very difficult. I then learned a very hard truth, which was my lack of gratitude. I realized how easy it was to take the things we have for granted because we have it so easy that we fail to be grateful for all the things given to us. And after that life-changing trip, I realized my outlook on life has changed. I was happier, more appreciative, and I complained less. The journey to get to that point was tough. The journey to Baram itself was tough. Being in a different and totally unfamiliar environment was tough. Yet, it was those experiences that taught me the simplicity of life, how to be grateful for all that we have, to not just whine and complain, because somewhere in our very own state, there are people who have it worse than us. I recall the first dinner I had in Baram when I observed my surroundings carefully. Broken floorboards, mattresses in a corner rolled out only for bedtime. The buzzing of insects accompanied by the occasional howls of the dogs. The toilet was a small hut about 100 meters away outside the house. How could anyone live here? I thought to myself. And then I heard my mom's voice in my head. She said, "It's good to be a doctor. It's good to help others." And it was only there and then did I understand what she meant. Thank you.